Hello, good afternoon. I'm Mike Duran from the Hudson Institute, and I'm joined today by the best ambassador in Washington, D.C., Karin Olofsdotter, the ambassador of Sweden. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you're here to discuss with us primarily the Swedish application to join NATO, but also everything that's going on in the world.
That would be great.
So let me start, as I like to do, with a completely baseless stereotype,
Okay, shoot.
which I have in my head. Mm-hmm. So I've been to Sweden at least once, so I'm not completely ignorant. But I had a vision of the Swedes.
Of the blondes, which I am not.
I had another vision of the Swedes, in addition to the blondes from the James Bond movies. I had a vision of the Swedes as bunny huggers, just as a country for whom military neutrality was in its DNA. Mm-hmm. And this is clearly not true now. I think we can see that. So could you just help me explain to me what happened?
Well, up till now, military neutrality or military non-alignedness have basically been in our DNA, because Sweden is a great warrior nation. Up till 1814, or 1809, we were basically in every war you could possibly perceive. We have fought the Russians, I think, not more than anyone else, but a lot. So I actually calculated, this is just for curiosity, but between basically the year 1000 and 1809, we were in 60 wars. And that's not counting the Viking raids, I guess. But so, we have always been a huge warrior nation. We were a big power in Europe. 1809, we lost Finland to Russia. We got Norway in return a little bit later. And since then, our territory has shrunk. But in those days, long story, but we had to get a new king, a new royal family, because it was perceived that the former one was a little bit too much against Napoleon. So they got another one who they thought would be pro-Napoleon. That didn't turn out to be the case in the end. But the crown prince's imported French marshal, he wanted to play a role as a peace negotiator in Europe. And also our coffers were empty because we had been in all these wars and we had lost territory, as I said. So he decided that Sweden should be military non-aligned and neutral because he wanted to play a role as a peace negotiator. So that has followed us then through history. And as many countries in the 19th century, we were very poor. 1/4 of our population, or 1/3 even, left for America.
That's how we got all these Swedes in Minnesota.
Yes, exactly. But so what happened was, fast forward to end of the, beginning of the Cold War. Actually, Sweden suggested to Denmark and Norway that we should form a defense union. But then Denmark and Norway realized that when NATO was formed, that was where they wanted to belong. So our security has always been tied to Finland, given our history. Finland was part of Sweden for 700 years, and as I said, we lost it in 1809.
This is because Russia is the major strategic
yes, and also
threat, and
Finland was part of our territory for 700 years. So when Finland had to have this friendship pact with the Soviet Union, we realized that we couldn't join NATO because then we would leave Finland alone. With the risk of an attack of the Soviet Union on Finland was considered so high that this would, be bad for our neighborhood, to put it very simply. So we decided to stay outside of NATO at the time. We even started producing our own nuclear weapons in the 50s. We just sent the plutonium back to you guys in 2006, I believe it was. But anyway, so we had to take care of our own security. So in the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s, we were spending 3 to 4% of GDP on our own defense. To make our own defense believable and our military non-alignment and neutrality believable, we also because we are great engineers, we have a lot of engineering companies, we developed a very strong defense industry. So we actually build our own fighter jets, we build our own submarines, we don't have it anymore, a huge shipbuilding capacity. We had a big conscript army. We really took care of our own security. And as I said, 3 to 4% of GDP. Then Soviet Union fell. We all believed in a new day, and like many in Europe, dismantled our defense or cut back on it. Late 90s realized that we had cut back a little bit too much, so we were down to 1% of GDP. Still producing our own fighter jets and our own submarines and all that, and a lot of other weapon systems as well. So then slowly, gradually, and then you come to 2008 with the attack on Georgia, and then Crimea in 2014, and then we realized Russia was not what we thought it would be. So then we increased our defense spending even more. So we're up to 1.3, 1.4. Between 2014 and 2025, we did an increase of 80% of our defense spending. And we've just decided to go for 2%, which is massive. So we really take our security extremely seriously. And joining NATO, we really, and we know we are a great contribution to NATO because of our very advanced military forces, our super modern equipment. And, we have been in every NATO operation since the last 30 years. So we are a strong contribution.
So in my ignorance, I had this notion of Swedish neutrality as the product of an attitude, but what you're saying to me is there was actually a strategic brain all along that was weighing the balance of forces and deciding that this was strategically the best move for
yes, for
Sweden,
the region.
For the region.
For ourselves, first of all, of course, but for the region. And I guess security policy in the end always comes down to yourself anyway, or your own nation, because that's what the politicians are responsible for. So, in the mid-90s, we joined the European Union. So then we dropped neutrality because we didn't feel that you could have a neutral foreign policy and be part of a foreign policy union.
You joined the EU in 95?
95, yeah. So since then we've been military non-aligned, but that doesn't mean that we don't cooperate militarily with a lot of countries. So as I said, we've been in every NATO operation since we became partners for peace, that program that NATO has, and now we're enhanced partner to NATO. We have very deep defense planning and cooperation with Finland. With NATO, as I said, enhanced partner. We are a very close partner to the United States. And our fighter jet, for instance, the Gripen, 50% of the content is American. So we do a lot of development, technological development together with you guys.
I did not know that.
And we just actually Saab, who builds, forget about the car, but Saab actually split in the 80s to two branches, one for the military arm and one was the car arm.
Doesn't it make jet engines? Am I wrong about that? Or
no? I don't know about the engines, but they do make airplanes. Yeah. And right now we have a new factory out in Indiana where we produce trainer fighter jets for the U.S. Air Force. That Saab is doing, and based on the Gripen model.
So I can't leave this neutrality question behind, though, just because I admit it's from ignorance, but still, there must have been this decision to apply for membership in NATO. There must have been some elements of the Swedish society that are uncomfortable with it, and it can't be something that happened just because of the Russian invasion. There must have been some kind of shift. Could you discuss that a little bit?
We have 8 political parties in Sweden, and some of them have been wanting us to join NATO for a long time. Others have not. And the biggest political party, the Social Democrats, they have not wanted to join NATO. But everyone has been in unity that we should cooperate with others as closely as possible. And also, when we joined the European Union and later on when that union developed, it has kind of a solidarity clause. And so every government for the last 10, 15 years have reiterated that if there is an attack or a crisis in a Nordic country, because everyone is not member of the European Union, or a Nordic country or an EU member, we will come to that country's rescue. So it's kind of been a one-sided solidarity expression.
Right.
But of course, that didn't mean that we could count on anyone else because, as we all know, and now Article 5 is sacred for the members of the alliance. And so gradually we have increased cooperation with others. And then when we saw what happened in February, and we also saw earlier, of course, the build-up.
Right.
around.
You mentioned that in 2008, 2014.
And also the Russian build-up around Ukraine,
Yeah.
starting from late fall. Of course, that made us very worried. And then when the massive attack came in February, I think we realized that this was a brutality and a use of force that we had not expected coming out of the Russians. So given the debate that changed in Finland, followed on a strong debate in Sweden, and our security is so linked together, as I told you about all these thousands of years. So that really made the debate very strong in Sweden. In general, support for joining NATO has been around 38-40% among the general population. But then it actually gone up. And it's, I think the support to join NATO is very high if Finland joins. If Finland wouldn't join, the support is lower. So our security is really tied together. And if you look at the map, we are the missing pieces of the jigsaw puzzle for NATO operational planning. And so with us both joining, you get a strategic depth.
Right.
That's very important, and for all of NATO.
I wasn't aware of how linked Sweden and Finland are. I guess I've also been to Finland. I guess because the languages are so different. I didn't really think of it as a unit in that way. You kind of answered a question I have, but I'm sure you have more to say on it. We have a lot of people in America today on the left and on the right who are arguing for a more restraintist foreign policy. America first. And so the first question that comes to their mind when we talk about expanding the alliance is, you're expanding Americans' commitments to other countries. Aren't we just endangering ourselves? Aren't we embroiling ourselves in other people's conflicts we don't need to be embroiled in? Aren't we taking on more free riders? Aren't we provoking the Russians and so on? So if we had someone who thought like that here, and they were to put those questions to you, what's in it for America? What
I would
you say?
I would say lots in it for America, because you have already promised as an alliance, and that's not just the United States, to come to the rescue of Norway. And the Baltic republics and Northern Germany and Poland. And I mean, that's a commitment that you all have done as NATO members.
Right.
If you then get Finland and Sweden as well, and if you look at the map, Sweden is huge territory. We're actually the size of California, with 10 million people, 400,000 moose. They're also great.
You have California without the homeless.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. No, but so, we bring, as I said, strategic depth. We bring these actually great military capabilities and a very modern armed forces, and that are already, totally interoperable. I think our accession talks, when they happen at NATO, were scheduled to be like half.
Totally interoperable. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had not thought of that. But since you're a partner nation.
Yes, and also our defense industry is totally interoperable, because otherwise they wouldn't have a market.
All right.
So we are, everything we do is NATO standard.
Right.
Otherwise we wouldn't be able to sell it, and also not cooperate with others, because that's what we do. So we
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No. So we actually, and I really want to tell that to those Americans who are hesitant, we bring additional forces and additional strength to NATO. I think you Americans can sleep a little bit better at night, because if you really look at the map, you see that we fill in a hole that has been missing.
Right.
So when we do operational planning for the whole of this region, it contributes to the security of all of the alliance, of course, because the way we operate and how we cooperate in the north will, of course, strengthen it. So
it must actually make Mr. Putin very nervous. Very uncomfortable.
Yes, then again, we haven't attacked anyone since the 18th century. So, and also I think that's important to say, of course, we realize that we are joining an alliance that is about the defense. It's not an alliance that's kind of provoking wars with others. It's a defense union. And we are really ready to be part of the defense of all of NATO, of course.
So, Mark Twain supposedly said that God created war to teach Americans geography.
Okay, that's maybe a bit, inward looking.
Yeah. But it's also true. That's right. And so I learned a little geography since the war in Ukraine began, and I discovered this island. You probably are familiar with it, Gotland.
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 Yeah.
All of a sudden, I keep reading about Gotland and the strategic importance of it. I didn't know it existed until now. Why does this island matter? Why are the Russians threatening it? What's the...
No, the Russians not really threatening it, but of course it has a very strategic location in the Baltic because it's a big island. I don't actually know what to compare it with in size in the United States, but it's a big island basically in the lower southern part of the Baltic. So it has a strategic location because, you can go in through the strait between Sweden and Denmark, and then you go up, and then you have all the NATO allies, and then you have Kaliningrad, which is Russian, and then you have the port of St. Petersburg and so on. So there's a lot of military traffic here and a lot of trade. It's always been about trade, and this was a huge Viking hold actually originally, and for the Hansa and so on. So it's always been a strategic location. So if you have hold of Gotland, you actually have a lot of access and room to maneuver and decide about the Baltic Sea. But now it's ours.
But this would have always been the case, no?
Yes, it's always been
how
the
come
case.
it's suddenly in the news? What's the...
I think it is because we are talking about Baltic security again, and we are talking about this region. But it's been like that for thousands of years.
And it's just opposite Kaliningrad?
Yes, and the Baltic republics.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this has always, through history, been a very strategic place.
So there are no Russian designs on it, nothing?
I haven't heard that, but of course we are reinforcing it militarily right now to be on the safe side. So we put a lot of effort now on reinforcing Gotland militarily.
Okay, so the other thing I learned from the war in Ukraine is that there's this place called the Black Sea, and just underneath it is Turkey.
Yes.
Yeah, I had not been aware of this prior to that, and now I discovered
What grade
it.
did you have in geography?
Anyway, I'm a very quick study.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So I also learned that the Turks have some reservations about Swedish and Finnish accession to NATO. Can you tell us where the discussions are now?
Yes, well, of course, we had gotten assurances from Turkey earlier that they were looking upon our membership favorably. And we do think that the Turks think it's a good thing that we would join, but they have concerns related to their security with us joining. And of course, for us, Turkish security is very important. We are joining an alliance where all the member states are very important. So of course we take their concerns seriously. And we are looking into how to address some of them. So for instance, as we speak, we are now getting a new terrorism legislation, or anti-terrorism legislation, maybe one should say, we've always been a strong fighter against terrorism, but fixing a few things that were missing. For instance, now it will be forbidden or illegal in Sweden to be a member of a terrorism organization. That will be a crime in itself. Then also we are also looking at weapons export. We have very strict legislation as most countries do, but now when we hopefully join an alliance, we will have to look at all members equally, when it comes to arms export. So that's something as well. We are also looking into some of the organizations in northern Syria, how we will be in official contacts with them. Those are also organizations that the United States and all of us are, closely working with, because they are fighting Daesh, which is very important.
I have I'll give you my view. You didn't ask for it. Well, I'll give you my view on the Turkish policy. I don't want to minimize the concerns that they say that they have about Sweden and Finland, but there's a Turkish saying that I yell loudly at my daughter so that my daughter-in-law will get the point.
Okay.
So
I understand what you mean.
They're poking their finger at Sweden and Finland because they can't poke it comfortably at the Americans. But that's the real agenda is with us.
Maybe it's like that, but now it's about us. So what we try to do is, given our legislation and how we see the world, trying to do whatever we can to address, within the limits we have, of course, address the concerns of Turkey so that they understand that we are really becoming a member for all of all of the alliance, and we recognize Turkey's, armed forces and their strength, and they're part of the alliance, and so on. So
I see
we're
the two
really
of
trying
you.
to we're really trying to address this, and then we will see if there are, as you said, the sister or the daughter-in-law in that in that game or not. But we can only talk for do our thing.
Right. So if I read you correctly, it sounds like the conversations with the Turks are going productively.
We hope so. We are in contact with them. I can't go into the details of the conversations.
You can tell secrets here. We don't.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't reveal any.
No, but I really hope that we will come to a good agreement, because I do think, as I said, we are a great contribution to the alliance, and us joining strengthens the whole piece of it, and also Turkey. So we really hope that we can come to an agreement as soon as possible, because we are, of course, worried about our security situation, given what we have seen that the Russians are doing in the Ukraine. We haven't seen right now, we always have, there's always a, threat level in the Baltic, and always been tensions. But of course, we feel that the Russians it's unpredictable and dangerous. So we really want to be members as soon as it's physically possible.
Let me ask you about that. If I'm not mistaken, you know Russian, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I was surprised at how many Europeans were surprised by. I was in Hungary on pretty much the day that.
I've served as ambassador to Hungary as well.
I did not know that.
Yes.
No, forgive me. So they were telling us. They're not going in. Putin's going to cut a deal. This is on February 24th or 23rd. I thought, this is crazy. Just because I just think it hasn't happened very often in history that you've had an army buildup that big that didn't get used. I mean, you get saber rattling, but not a buildup like that. But a lot of Europeans were taken by surprise.
Yeah, and there I must really say how grateful we are to the United States for sharing intelligence in a way that we maybe haven't seen before. That has been absolutely great. And I think we saw, just as you did, we saw the build-up. We worried about that. But we didn't ourselves maybe see the intent which you saw. And maybe when you live somewhere, this is just me speculating now, but when you live somewhere, you don't want the worst to happen. It kind of maybe becomes that you don't want to see it, because the truth is so horrible.
Right.
So I don't know if that was the case. But your intelligence proved absolutely right. And I think this has also been very great for transatlantic relations. And we see that the administration is doing that on other areas as well now. So that's extremely helpful.
You realize we're going to put a quote on the website now that the ambassador of Sweden says that Mike Duran's intelligence was great for the transatlantic.
Exactly. But I think the way your administration, really informed us was great.
It is the great advantage that we have. We're terrible at human intelligence. But we have this great electronic eye.
I don't know how they got the intelligence, but somehow, if it was human or machine,
no,
I don't know. But it wasn't good intelligence.
I can tell you this: it was machine, but the very best intelligence comes when the human and the machine come together.
Yeah.
When when the bad guy's mistress puts a gizmo under his pillow. That's where the really good stuff comes from.
Maybe that's what happened. Who knows?
Could be. Yeah, maybe there's a gizmo under Putin's pillow.
If you know Sweden, you know that when we do something, we kind of do it seriously. We're a country of engineers.
Right.
That's who we are. And we will be a great member of NATO. We will do everything we can to keep an alliance strong. And given our military capabilities and our experience, we are a great contribution. So I hope those of you out there who are hesitant about our, military forces and what we are, you can put that unrest aside.
Okay, that's great.
And sleep better, as I said.
Do you have a moment for a question or two?
Sure.
Okay, so let's turn it over to the audience. And there's Matt.
Well, thank you for being here, Ambassador. And it is, I think, very exciting that we're talking about NATO expansion for the first time in 20 years, in just about 20 years. There was a great interview this morning in the Wall Street Journal with the Finnish president, whose name I'm not going to
Niinistö.
Thank you for filling that in because I would have butchered it. Where he went into some detail about Finnish military cooperation with the alliance and with the United States. You've touched on some of it. I wonder if you might talk some more about it. Just for comparison, the Finnish president even made the point that if you actually include reservists, Finland, a country of 5 million, has more military manpower than the Germans, who have 80 million people.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you might talk a little more specifically about Sweden.
Finland has had never gave up its conscript army. We did for a while, but we're back at it. We're not at the numbers we used to be, and I don't think we will either, because now it's more about technology for our part. So within the 2% that we are now going to spend, and also the decisions we've already taken, we are building 5 new regiment or military bases. We are also procuring more fighter jets, as I said, so I think we will be up to 90. So together, Norway, Finland, and Sweden, you will have 200 fighter jets, both American and Swedish, for that region. We will we have commissioned new submarines. We already have 2, but we are commissioning more. So, and those are, tailor-made for the Baltic, and we build them ourselves, as I said. We have, a couple of years ago, we bought Patriot missile defense system, and given that we are now on a shopping spree, as we say, we are more likely to procure more of those. So both spending and ramping up our capabilities, but also, of course, looking into how do we build up more manpower. So it's a combination of these 2 things. But given our territory, and we are much, Finnish forces are very much focused on army and air force. They have navy as well, but given our situation, we have to focus on all 3, given our long coastline. So I think we are a good combination.
Do you think?
We will have 4 subs. I thought we had only 2. All right, okay, sorry. So we actually have 4 submarines. We will have even more submarines.
Do you think that if Sweden had not applied for NATO membership, Finland would have applied alone? Or was it a requirement of Finland that Sweden go along with it?
Well, the president of Finland has been very clear that this is something we're doing together. And also, if you look at the map, the strategic depth you get is, if Sweden would have been like military non-aligned in the middle there, it would, of course, make it more difficult.
Right.
And the debate in Sweden has been that if we wouldn't have gone for this, we would have to go up to 3 or 4% of GDP again on defense spending, because then we would be completely alone.
When is the last time that all of the Nordic countries were in a military alliance?
We've never been. When the 14th century. Yeah, Union of Kalmar in the 14th century.
That's
and then we've all, over history, like Sweden has had Finland and Norway. Denmark has had Norway. Russia has had Finland. We had Norway. It's all been a mix. Sweden has, though, never had Denmark. But Denmark has had the southern part of Sweden, where I come from.
So now, with this, is Sweden taking Denmark, or Denmark's taking Sweden?
Exactly. We're waiting for that battle. No, we're extremely good friends. And I think this also, we've always had great Nordic cooperation, and we have had a passport union and a common labor market since the 50s, long before the European Union. So we're totally integrated. But now when we are all, hopefully we'll be all part of the same defense union, the cooperation will be even stronger.
Yeah, that's very interesting. A very interesting thought. Do we have any other questions? Anne-Marie?
I just have a quick question about the public mood and sentiment. I mean, did you just see that shift remarkably in February 24th? Or because you said you had 8 political parties, and usually these are hard decisions to make, and as we see Germany and France.
Some of the political parties, as I said, had an agenda to join NATO for a long time. For instance, the Liberal Party of Sweden just has a new party leader, and he has this kind of, it's quite fun, he has these posters around the country with an old ugly tie where he says, I've been a NATO proponent of NATO membership since this tie was modern. So that's one. The Sweden Democrats, they have been against joining, but they changed their mind, saying that if Finland joins, then Sweden should also join. The moderate party, the Conservative Party, have also had an agenda to join NATO for a long time. So it's been various views among the parties. So there are two parties still who are not in favor of joining, and that's the Left Party and the Green Party. But when you look at the representation in Parliament, it's a small majority. I think, is it 88% of the parliamentarians who are for joining NATO? So it's a very strong support.
You know, the alliance is a Catholic wedding. You can't get divorced. Well, you can divorce, but it can't divorce you. But my point is, you're signing on for a lot more than just balancing Russia at this moment. How do you see Sweden in the larger context of Western defense? In particular, what I'm thinking about is China. Do you think that China and that the United States and Sweden are on the same page with regard to China, for example?
More or less, yes. And you know, we're also a member of the European Union and have been so since 1995. So when it comes to our economy, we are totally integrated within the European Union, but we're also a huge trading partner. So for instance, Sweden is actually the 15th largest investor in the United States. And when it comes to population in the world, we're like number 90. And we have companies like Ericsson, ABB, AstraZeneca, a lot of these huge multinational companies on the forefront of research and technology. And for instance, Ericsson, of course, is critical to 5G and, you know, future of technology and communication and all that. We all are trading with China, United States, Europe, Sweden. But of course, we, over the last years, have become much more aware of what the backsides of this can be. So just like you, we have a strong investment screening strategy in Sweden. We have, when the rollout of 5G was happening in Sweden a year ago, it was decided that Huawei and ZTE could not be part of that rollout. And we were one of the few countries that actually called that out.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes, so we take this very seriously. At the same time, of course, as we see both China as an important player and an important market, just like you do. But of course, we have to be careful. And that's why I also think that the collaboration between the United States and Europe, and the European Union then I mean, is extremely important when it comes to the future of technology. And you know, standards, it might sound really unsexy and not fun, but standards is the thing. Because if we together set the standards across the Atlantic for the future technologies, that's what the Chinese will also have to adapt to.
Right.
And that's how you rule the world.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's so many facets to this, of course, how we should join and work together on China. But and I think it will be really interesting to see now, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Canada, the United States, the Arctic, and Russia and China. So you will get a totally different strength now, militarily, going north.
Is Sweden on the Arctic Council?
Yes.
Ah, okay, interesting. I hadn't thought of that dimension either. Right? No.
So I really think if we are all serious about that democracy is important, freedom of expression, technologies that are good for us, etc., the United States and Europe needs to really collaborate. So the more we can increase trade flows between ourselves, the more we can, exchange people and researchers and all that, the stronger we will be. And together, we are the market.
All right. Well, I, for one, am completely convinced. But I was pretty easy to convince anyway. But that's
but you were a bit surprised.
Yes, I was surprised, and it was a very persuasive case. So thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for tuning in.
Yes, thank you so much.